Darkness, just a map, 1512. A vast empire in the west of Anatolia, but the east? Emptiness, danger, uncertainty, and then the sound of a horse's hooves. In 1512, Yavuz Sultan Selim ascended to the throne, not as an heir to a legacy, but to a throne of despair left behind by his father Bayezid. In the west, an army stuck in a stalemate at the Hungarian border. In the east, the swords of Shah Ismail, red-capped, fearless, fanatical. And to the south, the Mamluks, an empire stretching from Cairo to Jerusalem, controlling the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. When Selim took the throne, he looked at the map and asked, where? The answer was simple, east. Always east. But this video won't just tell the story of a sultan's victories. No. In this video, you will see how new countries were born on the map, how flags were lowered and new ones were raised, how cities changed hands overnight, from Van to Cairo, from Mosul to Mecca, 8 years, 2 great campaigns, and the birth of an empire. Welcome. This is the story of Yavuz Sultan Selim's conquests. Summer, Eastern Anatolia, dusty roads, an army of 200,000, and on the horizon, a rising threat, Shah Ismail. Yavuz Sultan Selim made his move immediately upon ascending the throne. He left the Hungarian border in the west to defense, because the real danger was on the eastern border. Shah Ismail's Kizilbash armies were destabilizing Eastern Anatolia, pushing Selim's ascension into a legitimacy crisis. Selim's choice was clear. Either he would secure the eastern border, or he would lose the throne. In the spring of 1514, the army that set out from Edirne stopped in Istanbul, crossed the Bosphorus, and reached Ankara. And then, east, Sivas, Erzurum, and finally in the hot days of August, the Chaldiran plain. August 23, 1514. Early morning. Fog, and from within the fog, red caps emerging. Shah Ismail's army, light cavalry, archers, fast and deadly. But Selim had an ace up his sleeve, artillery. Ottoman cannons would be used on this scale in a field battle for the first time. As the battle began, Shah Ismail's cavalry charged into the Ottoman lines. But the cannons did not stop. With each volley, hundreds of Kizilbash fell. The clash that lasted throughout the day ended in Ottoman victory by evening. Shah Ismail, after showing his last resistance with his sword, disappeared into the darkness. He fled. For an emperor, this was a wound deeper than any blade. What he left behind, however, were lands waiting to be conquered, and Selim did not stop. After Chaldiran, the army advanced. The gates of Eastern Anatolia swung wide open. Van. This strategic fortress by the lake became the new eastern stronghold of the Ottomans. Bitlis. Remaining semi-independent as a Kurdish emirate, it came under Ottoman protection under Selim's pressure. And further north, the South Caucasus, the western regions of Georgia, the southern passes of Dagestan, the border crossings of Azerbaijan, all were added to the Ottoman map one by one, but the most critical move was to the south. Selim turned his army south, northern Iraq, today's Mosul, Erbil, Sulaimaniya line. This region was the gateway to Mesopotamia. Taking it meant opening the road to Baghdad, and Selim opened it. Mosul surrendered without resistance. Erbil Castle came under the Ottoman flag. The mountains of Sulaimaniya were now lands patrolled by Ottoman soldiers. And then, Tabriz, the capital of Shah Ismail. Selim entered Tabriz with his army. The city, albeit briefly, came under Ottoman control. This was the easternmost point reached by the Ottoman army. But winter was approaching. The supply lines extending to Erzurum would be cut by snow and cold. Selim made a difficult decision to withdraw from Tabriz. But as he withdrew, he left something behind. Van, Mosul, the South Caucasus passes. All were now permanently Ottoman lands. Look at the map. Before and after 1514, Eastern Anatolia was now completely red, Ottoman red. Lake Van shone like an inland sea in the middle of the empire. In the north, flags pressed against the Georgian border. In the south, Mosul stood as a watchtower gazing toward Baghdad. But Selim did not stop, because the eastern border had been secured, and now there was a greater target to the south. The south, the Syrian deserts, and beyond them one of the world's oldest cities, Damascus, the Mamluk Sultanate, an empire stretching from Cairo to Jerusalem, from Damascus to Alexandria. They controlled the eastern Mediterranean coast. They held the key to Red Sea trade, and most importantly, they held the Hijaz, Mecca and Medina, the heart of the Islamic world. Selim's target was clear, the Mamluks. Why? Because the Mamluks were in a secret alliance with the Safavids. Because the eastern Mediterranean coast was the final piece to complete Ottoman naval power in the west. And because Jerusalem, Mecca, Medina, whoever controlled these cities would be the leader of the Islamic world. Summer 1516, Selim began his advance toward Aleppo with his army. But Mamluk Sultan Kansu al-Ghari was waiting for him. In the Syrian deserts on the Marj Dabiq plain, the two armies faced each other. August 24, 1516. The beginning of the battle resembled Chaldiran. The Mamluk cavalry were among the world's finest mounted archers. But again, artillery. Ottoman cannons roared in the desert heat, and there was something else. Cracks within the Mamluk army. Syrian emirs were not satisfied with the Mamluk administration in Cairo. In the midst of battle, some units switched sides. Kansu al-Ghori died on the battlefield. His head was severed. For a sultan, there was no quieter end than this. The Mamluk army was scattered, and Selim advanced. Aleppo, northern Syria, surrendered quickly. But the real target was to the south, Damascus, one of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities. Selim, entering Damascus, received the keys to the city. The fall of Damascus was not just the fall of a city. The heart of Syria had stopped. From Damascus northward, the Lebanese coast, Tripoli, the coastal strip of today's Lebanon, passed to the Ottomans. But Selim did not stop. South, further south, Palestine, Jerusalem, December 1516. Selim entered Jerusalem. Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Dome of the Rock, a city thousands of years old, was now on Ottoman lands. The capture of Jerusalem was not just a strategic victory, it was a symbolic one. A city sacred to the Christian world, sacred to the Muslim world, was now under Ottoman protection. And still he did not stop. Gaza, Nablus, all of Palestine fell, one by one. The eastern Mediterranean coast, all the way to the Egyptian border, came under Ottoman control. But the real target had not yet been captured. Egypt. In the autumn of 1516, Selim entered the Sinai Desert with his army. The Mamluks, to show their last resistance, positioned themselves at Ridania, north of Cairo. January 1517, winter, the cold of the desert, and two armies facing each other. January 22, 1517, the Battle of Ridania. This time, the Mamluks were better prepared against artillery. Their cavalry managed to approach the Ottoman lines, but Selim's army had learned from Chaldiran and Marj Dabiq. Artillery, infantry, cavalry. A coordinated massacre. The Mamluk army was scattered for the second time, and this time there was no return. Selim marched on Cairo. Mamluk Sultan Tumanbay showed his last resistance. Clashes continued in the city streets, like the final breath of a ruler before losing everything. But the outcome did not change. Cairo fell. The Mamluk Sultanate, after 267 years of rule, vanished into history, and Selim had one more thing to do in Cairo: the Mamluk treasures. The riches of Egypt, but most importantly, the keys to the Hijaz. The Mamluks carried the title of servant of the two holy sanctuaries. Now this title passed to Selim, but Selim had not yet left, because one last move remained. Midwinter, an army crossing the Sinai Desert. And this time the target was not just a city, it was a world. Selim turned east from Cairo. Target, the Hijaz, Western Arabia, the Red Sea coast, and within it, two cities that concerned billions of people across the world, Mecca and Medina. With the fall of the Mamluks, the Sharifs of the Hijaz, the local rulers of Mecca and Medina, sought a new power. Selim sent them a message: surrender and the holy cities will be safe. The Sharifs surrendered without resistance, because the Mamluks were gone. And Selim's army was at the other end of the desert. In the early months of 1517, Selim's men entered Mecca, the Kaaba, Zamzam, pilgrims performing tawaf. And now, the protector of these sacred lands was the Sultan in Istanbul. Then Medina, the Prophet's mosque, the tomb of the Prophet. All came under Ottoman protection. And at that moment, a historical title was born. Selim was no longer just Sultan. He carried the title of Khadimul Haramin, servant of the two holy sanctuaries. This was not just a title, it was the leadership of the Islamic world, the protector of Sunnism against the Shiite Safavid threat. Look at the map again in 1512. The borders were in Western Anatolia. By 1520, from Van to Cairo, from Mosul to Mecca, the eastern Mediterranean coast, the northern Red Sea, both shores of the Gulf of Suez, all red, all Ottoman, Now let's look at the map one last time. 8 years, 2 great campaigns, and before you a world that has been born. In the east, Van and the surrounding region of Bitlis were no longer just conquered lands. They were the eastern wall of the Ottomans, the shield against Iran. Lake Van shone like an inland sea in the middle of the empire. Further north, the western coasts of Georgia, the southern passes of Dagestan, and the Azerbaijani border had handed the northern route of the Silk Road to the Ottomans. To the south, Mosul, Erbil, and Sulaimania had become a watchtower standing guard at the gates of Mesopotamia, the first step on the road to Baghdad. And then Syria, Aleppo, Damascus, Tripoli. The entire eastern Mediterranean coast was painted red from end to end. Levant trade was now under Ottoman control. Further south, Jerusalem, Gaza, and Nablus had placed the world's most contested, most sacred lands under Ottoman protection. And deepest of all, the Hijaz, Mecca, Medina, the shores of the Red Sea, the heart of Islam, and now the source of the title Khadimul Haramin that Ottoman sultans would carry. Finally, Egypt, Cairo, Alexandria, the Nile Delta, the gateway to the African continent, one of the richest lands in the world. The control of Suez was the final link connecting the Red Sea to the Mediterranean. This was not just land. This was the skeleton of a world empire. Europe, Asia, Africa, 3 continents under one flag. And the man who raised that flag was a sultan who had ascended the throne 8 years ago and looked at a map. Yavuz Sultan Selim fell ill. He set out for Chorlu, but on the way, he stopped. September 8th, 1520, at 49 years old, he bid farewell to life, a man who had not hesitated for even a moment during 8 years, finally stopping in the middle of the road. This was perhaps the most human moment of this story, but the legacy he left behind, it did not stop. His son Suleiman ascended the throne to inherit an empire surrounded by his father's conquests, and this empire would stand for another 400 years. The borders stretching from Van to Cairo, from Mosul to Mecca, would be among the longest-lasting Ottoman territories. Yavuz Sultan Selim is perhaps the least understood, most conquering sultan in Ottoman history. He ruled for less than 10 years, but in those 8 years he redrew the map. He added countries, he united continents, and he laid the foundations of a world empire. Before you close this video, think about this. In 1512, when you looked at the map, the east of Eastern Anatolia was unknown. By 1520, it was part of the world's greatest empire. And the man who made this possible was a sultan who decided overnight and marched east with his army. This is the story of Yavuz Sultan Selim, the story of conquests beyond borders. Borders belong to those who walk. If you enjoyed this journey through history, subscribe to Ashes of History. The past is waiting.